I have been making this film for 3 years, beginning in 2017. The film took a lot of research both in Paisley Library, the internet and the overgrown areas we seldom pay attention to anymore. Now that the film is finally ready to release, and with the laws regarding drones changing in March 2019, I have decided to release the film in its current form, using all the original drone footage filmed in 2018 by Brian Maguire, which complied with the rules and regulations at the time. And I feel this footage really makes the film come alive and shine a light on this fascinating part of Paisley's history. So in closing, I hope you enjoy the following documentary, Hidden Railways. I am filmmaker Paul Mothersole, and this film is about Paisley's hidden railways and the local memories of that lost age of steam and industrial grandeur. The Glasgow and South Western Railway and rival operator, the Paisley and Barrhead District Railway Company, were in a race to be the first to link Paisley and Barrhead. Between 1898 and 1905, the two railways were completed, which had required the construction of over 15 miles of track, 7 stations and numerous bridges and cuttings. The introduction in 1903 of the electric tram to the area meant almost overnight these grand monuments to Victorian engineering were rendered obsolete. The Paisley and Barrhead District Railway Company's line never carried a single paying customer, and the legend of the dummy railway was born. Unlike the so-called dummy railway, the competing railway known as the Barrhead branch actually carried paying passengers, but it too could not compete with the emerging tram and bus network. The lines had become dilapidated by the 1950s, with most of the stations being demolished between 1950 and 1968. Both lines served various industries around Paisley and the surrounding area for many decades to come. The link to the Linwood car factory was the last one to close on the 21st of October 1984. St James to Fergusley. This line served many industries from the siding just before Fergusley station. It included the Roots car plant and the press steel plant.
The rush hour trains from Glasgow, which actually terminated at Paisley Gilmer Street, but there was no facilities for turning the engines round to the other end of the train at Gilmer Street. And the engine with the coaches still in the station would uncouple and run forward to a crossover in the line, which would allow it to go past the coaches and connect back up to the Glasgow end of the train. It didn't go directly back to Glasgow because rush hour being what it was with trains every 2 or 3 minutes, it was getting in the way, and the solution to that problem was to reverse the whole train up onto the start of the Barrhead line, so it would sit there for 10-15 minutes and then they would bring it forward again through the station and whoop, off to Glasgow.
The things that I remember about the trains were the cars that were made there when it was pressed steel. That Volvo car that Roger Moore drove in the Saint, the shell was made in the body shop in Roots Pressing. The other thing that was on there ironically was the blue train. The blue train shells get made at pressed steel as well.
There was a line went off which served the Roots car factory and the pressed steel factory, which incidentally made wagons for the railway. 20-ton steel wagons.
And there was definitely steam trains, probably that kind of tank type of engine, pushing and pulling the train.
When I started with my trade in press steel, we used to have to go way up and work on the railways. They had the railway line, and it must be where I think Eldersley Golf Course is. And there was a big marshalling yard there, and there was always lots of trains. And press steel had trains running through it, and there were wee puffin billies, and we worked in them. The wee train that ran through Glenburn was a wee puffin billy.
And I seem to remember coal trucks on the back of the trains going along that railway line, taking coal home a couple of times, putting it in the fire. My dad didn't like it because he said it was cheaper coal and it sparked all over the place. I mean, there's 2 bridges I remember. One bridge is still there as you're going through Fergusley at Candron Road, taking you into the back road to Linwood. The other one, it was an entrance that took you on to the Linwood Road end behind where the factory was. There was an event, might have been early 60s, I was a wee boy at the time, but I believe there was passengers passengers on that line, and it was probably the only time it ever happened. That was strange, seeing that, you know, a passenger train going through there when previously it was all goods trains. I grew up in Candron Road, Fergusley Park. I used to play over the burn, you know, with the candy burn on one side near the houses, and the railway line was like the boundary between us and the factory.
When we went under the bridge, we used to yell out, and if there was a train crossing, you had to yell louder. You couldn't hear your voice, but if there was no train, your voice echoed all the way up, and everybody did it. All the kids did it. We had the steam whistle blown when they came into the station. They made a certain noise, the chug chug. There was a rhythm to the trains. The kids all loved to make that noise, and then when you come off, you would be saying choo choo, choo choo. Going in the choo choo train, people would say.
There's a few things that I remember about it. Playing on the railway line when there wasn't any trains there was one thing. Best Falls and Cowboys and Indians, all that kind of stuff. I can remember seeing a fire in the press steel in the kind of paint shop, but it was being fought from the railway line. All the way through the 50s it was steam trains. You know, the smell, the noise of the steam train.
Fergusley to Stanley. As the line made its way to Stanley Station via the Old Chain Road, which is now known as Fullbar Road, there was a goods branch to the Burnbank Chemical Works, then on to the Meikle Riggs goods depot.
When it was the school holidays, a crowd of about 15 of us went up to Foxbar via Fullbar Road and the old railway line.
But there was a junction off that branch which made its way under the viaduct at the Linwood Road end and headed up toward Foxbar and Glenburn.
We took a picnic and climbed the embankment. We followed the route of the train. The track was still there. It was overgrown a bit, and it was a great adventure. Lit a fire, put potatoes on, tins of beans, soup, and it was great fun. And then nobody brought any biscuits, and the teenager in charge said, if you just go through the bushes there and down the hill, you'll get the shops at Breadland, and we nearly died. We thought we were in the back of Beyond, so we were quite surprised at that, but it was good fun. It was a great day. And then we had to go the way back again, back down the line, back down the hill.
The line passed down below and to the left of the old Camp Hill High School and kept turning left until it was heading almost east again through the lower level lines of Glenburn.
Stanley to Glenfield. The line here was a single track both directions, and on the south side there was a goods yard and a line to the Fulton Scouring Works.
We used to have homemade bow and arrows, as it was always Cowboys and Indians on the telly, and we used to run after the train to shoot the driver. They would shoot back at us and we'd roll down the embankment. Then we would be sitting and lie down and put our ears on the railway line, and you would hear it going away. One of the things I do remember is we watched for the railway. They were planting the trees down Glenburn Road. I mean, you see them now, they're about 20 metres high, so they're as old as me. They must be in their 70s.
The Glenburn station, which today is in among the trees, was an island platform with the tracks going either side of it and a bridgeway across. I think that lasted for many, many years.
If you went away towards Foxbar and got to the railway bridge, which is now where St Peter's Church is, you could wait there and they would slow down and they would let you climb in the back of the coal tender. We would hide down and just hang on, and we'd go away on nearly to Barrhead under other railway bridges which are still there, as the stanchions are still there, and you used to always get out off your mother, have you been playing in the train?
West to Potterhill. The line veered southeast at the Meikle Riggs junction and continued on, passing under Stanley Road and cutting through Moorefoot before reaching Potterhill.
My recollections today take me back to 1953 or thereabouts. As a school lad, I used to take my bicycle down to Paisley West Station, lean up against the wall above the platforms and watch the trains go by. Occasionally, when I was watching cricket matches in the Meikle Riggs ground, I would see a train heading up that same branch that I talked about, the branch off the Paisley West station, so that was another sight worth seeing.
My earliest memories of the hidden railway date back to the late 70s, when we used to play on the remains of the abutment on Crossbar Road. It was quite high, and I recall looking down at the road, feeling like I was standing on the ramparts of an old castle. One day we decided to see where the old line actually went. I still vividly remember that expedition. We battled through the bushes and the undergrowth like we were in an Indiana Jones film. All of us fantasising, I suppose, that something amazing awaited us at the end of the line. Under Stanley Road, we found an old stone bridge, which seemed like some relic from ancient history to us at the time. I can clearly remember thinking at the time that this would be our gateway to even greater adventures. We weren't to be disappointed though, because we discovered a cutting that ran under Stanley Road to the bottom of Park Road. We called it the Secret Valley.
Potterhill to Barrhead. Services between Paisley West, Potterhill and Barrhead Central were terminated in 1913. For the remainder of its life, Potterhill served as the branch terminus for freight services, till finally closing in 1970.
The line for Cadbury's factory, or distribution warehouse I think it was located just off Neilston Road as it heads out into the country. Weekly there would be a train, steam engine on the front, and 4, 5, maybe 6 wagons, covered wagons, which were heading for the Cadbury warehouse to restock the warehouse for local deliveries.
I was a bit rebellious as a child, and I liked to climb up in the trees just by Potterhill station on the other side of the bridge at Neilston Road. As the train passed below, sometimes I would get swamped by all the smoke and end up all covered in soot, and then I would have to shimmy down the tree and run home coughing and spluttering. My mother wasn't too happy when she saw me, but it's still a memory I cherish even today.
Abercorn. The Paisley and Renfrew Railway, which closed to passengers in June 1967, was retained to serve the former Babcock and Wilcox plant until January 1981. The track was finally lifted in 1986.
We used to walk from Bashaw Park over to the Abercorn Bridge, and you would stand there and the trains passed and get covered in the smoke, and it was exciting. We used to love that.
Well, you can still see the curvature of the Abercorn station, which is beside the garden centre. That came off at Abercorn Junction and ran down past what is now the university buildings. It ended up in Renfrew Wharf, the only station on the line being Porterville Road, which was the station for the Babcock and Wilcox workers.
East to Dyke Bar. The East Station was the first to be built in August 1898. The line travelled through Seahill and crossed the River Cart on its way to Dyke Bar. There was also a goods line down to Lacey Street, and to the north 2 connections to the main line that were never completed.
When I was walking to school along Glasgow Road going to St Catherine's, we had to stop sometimes for a goods train crossing diagonally where Iceland is now in Whitehall, and it was quite exciting watching it and chugging along and going into a yard, and then we'd wait till it went in and then get across the wee bits to school.
It left the main Glasgow to Paisley Gilmer Street line round about Abercorn Junction and made a sharp left turn to go across the Glasgow Road on a bridge which didn't give much clearance to traffic, if I recall.
When I was growing up, you heard the stories of the older kids taking the shortcut across the Cart from Hunter Hill to Seed Hill, and that would have been in the late 1950s, I remember, which would have made me about 10 years old. So me and my friends thought we'd give it a try one day. I can still remember thinking how adventurous we were, scurrying across the bridge and then seeing the track descend into the big goods depot at Lacey Street. It was exciting stuff, but really, we knew only 1 train a day made its way there from Barrhead, so we were quite safe.
We weren't the only ones exploring the old lines though. Our pals at school told similar yarns about voyages of discovery following the remains of the dummy line that ran through Hunter Hill. Back in the 70s, the footprint of the line could be traced in places from the banks of the River Cart behind Blackford Road to the start of the footpath at Jenny's Well, which had the remains of a bridge. Quite why that old bit of bridge survived so long after the demise of the rest of the railway has always puzzled me.
Dyke Bar to Barrhead. Dyke Bar was an island platform station that formed passing points on a single line. The station was rented out as a private house while goods trains were still active. There was also a goods branch line that served the Dyke Bar Asylum.
The line passed by below the tenement houses of Hunter Hill. It then headed off towards Barrhead, yet another line heading for Barrhead. So now we have three.
The railway line runaway on and it went to the quarry at Brownside. Then there's a dog leg, it goes away down Grahamston Road, down to Dyke Bar, and sometimes we would walk there and we would play in the secret forest. I don't know why it was a secret, I think just because it was far away. If you go down Grahamston Road, you can still see the railway arch, so there must have been a railway alignment down there, but that was quite an expedition for us as young kids. I mean, we were maybe 6 and 7 year old.
It's ironic to think the railway was replaced by the trams. Then by the 1960s they had both disappeared. A bit of a shame really, as cars and buses just aren't as much fun as steam trains and trams.